How do we know whether accepting a double pawn is a good thing for us? That's one of the biggest chess trade-offs that many intermediate players get stuck negotiating. I found a beautiful segment to teach you this concept, folks. Black played the move knight d4. Fischer Reshevsky, 1962. Beautiful game. White needs to decide between knight takes d4 or c3, knight takes b3, a takes b3. In other words, should white take the knight on d4 and give black those double pawns, or should white play c3 and accept double pawns on the b file? A beautiful, teachable moment. I love those short segments that carry so many nuggets of information and so many key lessons that can improve our positional decision making, folks. Please stop the video. My videos are about active engagement. I want you to give your attention, actively engage with the material. Stop the video and think for yourself. Create your own ideas and hypotheses, and then you'll receive my feedback, right? Feedback, error correction, and then consolidation. You'll be having a good night's sleep, and you will consolidate all these memories. 4 pillars of learning in my videos. Let's begin. Assuming you spent some time in this position, guys, you're a great player if you played Fischer's move c3. Fischer plays c3 and he says, give me those double pawns. Exchange on my own terms like this. Why do you think, guys, Fischer played the move c3 and exchanged like this? Why did he reject the natural looking move knight takes d4? Many beginners, post-beginners, intermediate players play knight takes d4 without thinking, because they think they learned early on in their chess development that double pawns are bad in chess, right? We are conditioned to think that double pawns are a bad thing in chess. Today, I'm showing you those big exceptions, guys. Knight takes d4 was clearly a bad move. In fact, only c3 gives white an advantage. All other moves give black an advantage, including knight takes d4. Guys, there are 2 big reasons behind this transformation favoring black. Again, I want you to find yourself, actively engage with this position. Think for yourself, please, before I reveal the solution to you, before I express the thought process. Folks, first things first, the bishop on g7 gets more active on this diagonal. Just look at the bishop on g7. Just a tall pawn in its position, and Fischer's move leaves the bishop as a tall pawn. The bishop is completely shut down from the game, and that caused demise for Reshevsky. That was Fischer's winning plan. If you take on d4, first of all, you're giving more scope to the bishop. It can reach, for example, scores like e5 on the next turn, yeah? At some point in the future. Plus, maybe more importantly, you just got yourself a backward pawn on a semi-open file. Can you see the function of the pawn on d4 in freezing your c2 pawn? It's impossible right now for you to play c3 and defend your pawn on the semi-open c file. And black can later pile up the pressure against the c2 pawn. You just got yourself a weakness on a semi-open file, right? So, again, 2 important things. Piece activity-wise, the bishop got happier, and weakness awareness-wise, you created a problem in your camp. You created a weakness on c2 in this pawn transformation. And can you see the beautiful trade-off? Yes, black accepted those double pawns, but the claim is very simple. Piece activity, also weakness creation. Black gained positional advantages as a result. Plus, what's worse for white in this transformation is that this e4 pawn become more exposed because you just created a newly semi-open file on the e file. They will put pressure on the pawn on e4 with moves like this. Your king is still stuck in the center. Black can even play d5 later on to use the pin on the e file, right? You just got yourself one more problem on e4. Thus, Fischer doesn't take on d4. Compare and contrast all these problems to this variation. The bishop is a tall pawn. You have no more weakness on the c file, and nobody can attack the pawn on e4, right? Your king is very safe in the middle of the board. Plus, your rook also got more active on the a file. How can black even attack your double pawns? They are not a weakness at all. White can even play b4, b5 later on, as happened in the actual game, and undouble their pawns. Guys, again, that's very instructive. Reshevsky goes knight e4, expecting Fischer to commit a chess crime and take on d4. I will just give you some variations, right? What would happen if Fischer took the knight on d4? Just some sample lines. Queen e6 attacks the pawn, as mentioned. F3 defends, but the problem is this. Black get even castle short. You might tell yourself, hey, Queen h2 is coming and I will be mating the black king. Black says, no, 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 no. One more important pattern here, guys. Rook c8, rook fc8, very importantly, creating this f8 square for the king. And look, even after Queen h2, Black doesn't care about the threat on h7 because there is no mate. The bishop is an excellent defender and you have no manpower. Rook c6, ignoring you completely and doubling up their rooks on a semi-open file. A beautiful move that wins. That's a winning move for Black, guys. It's a beautiful pattern here as well. Look how safe the king is on f8. How can you attack the king? You have no manpower to attack the king. This bishop is single-handedly covering their king beautifully. There is no bishop h6 because of the g5 pawn, and now their attack is just starting on the queen side. Look, rook c8 piling up on the weakness on c2, queen h2. You need to go back and defend, and then comes d5. Problem on the e-file. The king is stuck. e5 to close the e-file. Well, everything is tied down. Plus comes one more pattern. Also very instructive, guys. Please watch. One pawn pushes to d3. The pawn is pinned. You cannot take. After c3, the other guy pushes to d4. And now catastrophe is happening on the c-file. Look how the double pawns are used effectively to open up the c-file by force and basically exploit White's lack of coordination. Their rooks are split, their king is in the center, and Black is just crushing through this game. Castle short. Black is simply winning a pawn, plus rook c2 is coming. This game is completely finished. Black is winning. Now, guys, instructive, right? Instructive nuggets of a small segment from an actual game that never happened. So, what's the big lesson? Always look at the piece activity and weakness creation when deciding on whether you want to take on double pawns or whether you want to give double pawns to the opponent, right? A shallow thought process is this. Hey, I'm taking double pawns. I'm giving double pawns to Black. That's a great exchange for White. If you only focus on this transformation momentarily, yeah, it looks good, right? It looks good to give double pawns to the opponent. It looks like a terrible structure. But then you talk to the weaknesses. You talk to the weaknesses. You talk to the piece activity. And then a whole different structure and understanding emerges. I will show you very quickly how the actual game progressed to conclude my point, guys. Fischer played c3 because there was an attack on the pawn on c2, right? He plays c3, takes. He takes back with a pawn to activate the rook, right? He doesn't take back with the queen in this position because this pawn was also hanging. That's more tactical. But of course, you will see the function of the rook activation very, very soon, guys. Queen e6, Fischer goes rook a5. The claim is totally about this outpost around d5. That's a beautiful segment as well. Look how he exploits the d5 outpost. Black wants to play f6 because look, the bishop is a tall pawn. They need to create some play on the f file perhaps. That's why they play f6. But then we are going to see a very instructive segment here. First, Fischer goes queen d5 and exchanges off Black's only active piece, right? That queen was putting pressure, putting pressure here, right? Causing some problems for our queen to defend stuff. So queen d5. Why? Because his chances are also quite huge in the endgame. Why? Because that's the first weakness. Rook is very active, and even this h7 pawn, as we'll see, become a long-term target in the position. White has the better bishop as well, right? He's seeing all these patterns, and then one more pattern is coming, guys. Takes. If you give move to Black, what move they will play? You tell me. In this new pawn transformation, Black gained a beautiful resource. If it's Black turn, they will play the move h5, and they are creating a passed pawn on the h-file, and your pieces must go passive in dealing with the pawn. Thus, Fischer stops it with a perfect positional move. You're a great player, folks. If you found Fischer's move, g5, clamping on the pawn on h7 with tempo. By playing g5, he's fixing the weakness on h7. He's fixing the weakness on a semi-open file. He's tying down the opponent's rook. Plus, he's stopping Black from pushing h5 and creating a passed pawn. Beautiful judgment. Please evaluate this position. I will stop here. White has a big advantage in his endgame, and Fischer later on converted this position nicely. Also, this segment was showing nicely the advantage of having double pawns for White as well, right? Look at this. These two pawns are clamping on the pawn on h7 while also paralyzing the opponent's bishop on g7. So in order to solve their problems, Black played f6. undoubling white's pawns, but their problems remained because the other guy, which was a double pawn, soon pushes to g5 and again freezes the pawn on h7 as a new target. To me, these positions are gold to teach us valuable lessons in a very clean medium. By focusing on these two variations, evaluating those two positions, we are learning tons of information about trade-offs, clashes between different positional concepts. It's always give and take in chess. It's a complex game, right? There's no perfect life. Often one idea contradicts with a different chess concept. And then by prioritizing the right information like piece activity and weakness awareness, you're generally choosing the right move. At least those are the nice shortcuts, thought process shortcuts for you to use and evaluate positions. That's why I'll be presenting those exercises to you in my upcoming book, the workbook for the Art of series. I compiled a workbook that involves 4 of the Art of courses I created for Chessable. Okay? Positional skill building. And I'll be presenting them mixed format puzzles to you involving such multiple choices. Imagine a chapter on such multiple choices. Choose between c3 or knight takes d4. Those are the puzzles that are waiting for you in that course. And that's exactly my point. With those clean puzzles, you can improve your positional skill. This will be your homework position, guys. This position is also going to that course on the multiple choice chapter. Black needs to decide between e takes d5 and c takes d5. What would you choose and why? Okay? Please give me the answer and your thoughts and the whys behind this answer. Okay? Lay down the plan to me as well. You know, I want to do this and my next plan is this and that. These are very beautiful puzzles, positional puzzles, 2 choices. We are directing our attention to the key information so you don't get bogged down, you don't get distracted by random noise in the environment. That's the function of such clean exercise. Again, just like in my blunder check course, I spent a long time crafting those puzzles for best learning outcomes for you. Expecting your feedback. If you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe and share this video with a friend of yours who you think would benefit from its content. That's very important for me to be able to produce content that actually help you get better in this beautiful game, folks. Thank you so much, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.